afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. You have Alyssa Corum here, and I am joined by Ed Carson on this Tuesday. We're going to get to the action for the major indexes, a pretty strong day, and we're also going to take a look at some tech stocks that showed some interesting action, and one stock showing a pretty valuable lesson.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at Apple once again, follow up on that strong day for that stock. Take a look at an iPhone chip maker, Qualcomm and Moderna, which did not have a great day today.
It did not, but we'll get into that. Let's take a look at the S&P 500 here, gaining 1.1% for the day, hitting a closing high to kick off the month of December. A nice gap up here for the S&P. We also had the Nasdaq closing up 1.3% for the day. Blue chips lagging a little bit. The Dow up 0.6% on the session. So what do you make of the action for the S&P today, Ed?
It was pretty strong. I mean, the S&P was basically the only one of the indexes that hadn't hit an all-time high. It had come just short of that last week, but the S&P and Nasdaq both at new highs. Big techs did very well today. A number of chip makers did well today. There was some lagging in cloud software. Obviously, Zoom Video was a drag on a lot of those names, and there's a lot of software stocks have earnings today, tomorrow, and Thursday. So, but definitely some nice broad market strength today.
Yeah, well, you mentioned big techs and chips, so it looks like our analysis of individual stocks today will touch on that in a good way. Let's check back in on Apple. Ken and I touched on this yesterday, but we noted the close for Apple was kind of in the middle of the range, right around this downward sloping trend line. It powered above that level today, nicely up about 3.1% for the session. Another day of volume that was roughly about average, but higher than, if you rewind a couple of weeks to how volume was pacing. So a pretty clear buy signal today, Ed, with the clearing of this downward sloping trend line.
Yeah, with the downward sloping trend line, and we got above 122.09. That's another, like on a vertical line, or horizontal line that you could draw. There's also 125.49 there, and then before finally the official buy point. I know what an investor might do. I mean, you could buy a position here, but one thing you could do is start a position here. It's bouncing off the 10-week line. There's a couple of these other buy signals that we talked about with the trend line and that early entry. So that's a way maybe you start a position, and then maybe if Apple continues to work, you can fill out that position without ever getting too extended. Let the market draw you into the stock. But it's definitely a great sign if Apple can do well for the market.
Yeah, and we do have Apple trading about 5% above the 10-week line. And when we talk about starting positions, sizing them off of the 10-week, we like seeing it within 10%. So seeing Apple 5% above that level and moving higher, that is a good sign. And I like that strategy you outlined there, Ed, in terms of scaling in for that buy. Let's flip on over to Qualcomm, ticker QCOM. Good move here today of 2.8% above average turnover. And this name was added to Swing Trader today.
This one was added to Swing Trader while Apple was added to Leaderboard. This one has a 4 weeks tight pattern. That you can see in the middle of that area is where the actual buy point, the official buy point, is above that. But you can see how it sort of closed down below that level. Really, we had a downward sloping, just a tiny slope down on that handle, or even just a sideways. This is an all-time closing high today. So you could certainly have started a position today. How we got there. Just nice action. This is a growth area. 5G. Apple iPhone, the 5G iPhone as well. So this is an area that's doing well. We saw Qorvo do well. We saw Taiwan Semi do well. So Apple chip makers are definitely doing well.
A nice group move. And what we say is when we see a stock that gaps up on its earnings report, you want to see that stock hold the gains, trade nice and tight. It's definitely what we saw here for Qualcomm. And then what do we say? Oh, if you miss that earnings gap, look for that next buying opportunity. And that is what we're seeing right here, right now for Qualcomm.
That's right.
And last but not least, Moderna, mRNA. Pretty gnarly day today. Downside reversal, the stock closing down almost 8%, Ed. Really heavy volume. I mean, we were eyeing a breakout for this stock kind of right around that 81, 82 level. What do you make of what happened today? I'm sure it stung a little bit for investors in this
It
stock.
did. If you bought correctly, if you bought around that 81 level or even at the 95 level, you're still got a big gain. But, yesterday it closed, I think, something around 44% above the 10-day line. Today it must have been 50, 60% above the 10-day line at one point. It's still pretty far above that. So those were signals to yesterday and today, both the move high, and even when in closing just below yesterday's closes, are all signals that maybe to take partial profits. I mean, that doesn't mean that the stock is going to do terribly or anything like that. It's obviously had a huge run, but this stock could still fall back to the 10-day line without any trouble. You see how quickly it did it today, the selling.
Yeah, that's right. So when you see these big, powerful moves like this, another area that we've seen it are for the China EV stocks, a number of high-flying IPOs as well. You want to be keeping a close eye on those shorter-term trend lines, and we break down all of this in detail, the nitty-gritty, every morning on IBD Live. So we hope you join us for our detailed discussions on strategies like this and more, in addition to tuning into this show. And, we mentioned Leaderboard and Apple being added today. Well, Leaderboard Scorecard, our exclusive monthly webinar for Leaderboard subscribers, is happening very soon at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific. Again, it's a monthly webinar. We're going over all things Leaderboard for the month of November, what was added, what was removed, some of the highlights, talking about the performance and market conditions as well. So that should be pretty interesting, Ed.
Yeah, and it's a great lesson for all investors. You're doing a post-mortem of all your trades, short-term and long-term. So this is very useful, not just to see how Leaderboard did, but it's a good example of how you should be doing with your own actions as well.
That's right. Applying all of that knowledge to other holdings in your portfolio, perhaps, that aren't on Leaderboard at the moment. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you check out Leaderboard Scorecard. Go over to leaderboard.investors.com for that. You can click on the top banner. There should be a link there for you to join that webinar. So Chris and Co. will see you there, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow. Thanks for watching.